think if we did it this way, then players can have the best of both worlds. Okay, I see your point. Okay, we'll go with that then, but keep mine as backup, yeah? You don't think the grid is too big? Too small? I mean, you can't be attacked at least for the first couple of player turns, so it's good from that point of view. I mean, we've playtested it okay at 2 players, haven't we? Hang on. What's the recording light on for? Damn! We come up with a brand new game and now we're sharing it with the world. La la la, you didn't hear anything of that, did you, listeners? Quick, clear it away! Yes, in the confidential box. Could be onto a gold mine with this idea. Howdy ho, doo doo doo. Think we may have got away with that. Just hit the button before we dig ourselves a bigger hole. Alexander Pfister's fan favourite game is a stable title in anyone's collection, including ours, and that would be Great Western Trail, launched way back in 2016. Since then, we've had the expansion, Rails to the North, and more recently the relaunch of the game alongside 2 sequels. We've already had Great Western Trail Argentina, which was an exciting release for many back in 2022. It introduced some really cool, fresh new twists to the fan favourite. While more info has arisen from Plan B Games regarding the 3rd instalment in the trilogy, namely Great Western Trail New Zealand. Great Western Trail New Zealand is said to add even more new twists than we saw in Argentina, but still retains the essence of Great Western Trail. You and up to 3 other players take on the role of run holders on the South Island of New Zealand. You'll move your run holder along a trail up to the top of the board to Wellington. Along the way, you'll perform actions that give you various ways to earn victory points. Each time your run holder reaches Wellington, you deliver your sheep to a local or foreign trading post, which may also be worth victory points. Then your run holder continues movement back to the start of the trail at the bottom of the board. At the end of the game, you'll score victory points from a variety of components you acquired during the game, and any points marked with your colour on the game board and the Sea Routes board. The player with the most victory points wins the game. If you're already familiar with GWT, all of this should sound very familiar, aside from the sheep and lack of cattle, so allow me to highlight some of the new elements you'll experience in GWT New Zealand. New cards in the game come in the form of sheep cards. Funny that, which functions similarly to the cattle cards in the previous versions. Separately, you'll have a supply with new deck building cards in. The special deck building supply will have Romney sheep cards, sheepdog cards, ferry cards, and Qatari bird cards, which you can gain in different ways throughout the game. You can play these cards from your hand on your turn to take a special action. Plus, there are also 10 sets of bonus cards, and you'll randomly choose 4 to include in each game. You can spend gold, which is a new type of resource, to buy these bonus cards and add them to your deck as well. These new types of cards add a lot of variety and will open up new strategic options for how you build your deck and choose to use the cards in it as you play. Great Western Trail New Zealand has 4 types of workers you can hire in the game. You have shepherds to help you acquire better sheep cards, craftsmen to help you build those glorious private buildings, sailors to move your ship on the Sea Routes board, and sheep shearers, which help you shear your sheep and earn money based on their wool value. This is basically a second delivery option you'll have, since the sheep cards not only have a breeding value, but they also have a wool value. Now you're probably wondering where the engineer in all this is. Well, surprise, there are no engineers. No engineers, no trains, or indeed train stations. I'll let that sink in for a minute. Above the main game board, there's a new Sea Routes board, reminiscent of the additional board in the Rails to the North expansion. Now you can sail your ship around on the Sea Routes board with the help of your sailors. Along the routes there are several harbours, each of which either allows you to place a storehouse or one of your player discs if your ship is on an associated water space. As always, when you place one of your discs, you unlock some cool treat. Storehouses are also on your player board and can be unlocked in any order, but you only unlock storehouse bonuses when you've removed 2 storehouses next to each other on your player board. Delivery in Wellington seems to be more streamlined in GWT New Zealand compared to Kansas City and Buenos Aires. As usual, you'll gain income and place one of your discs onto a trading post based on the breeding value of your unique types of sheep cards. But when it's time to choose tiles from the foresight area, things are a little different. There are only 4 foresight tiles, 2 A tiles, which will either be workers or hazards, rockfalls or floods, and 2 B tiles, which are new bonus tiles. Speaking of bonus tiles, another big change in GWT New Zealand is the way the game ends. It's no longer triggered by the worker market filling up. Instead, the end of the game is triggered when you place a bonus tile onto the last space of the bonus tiles market during a delivery in Wellington. Another interesting new twist is that midway through each game, you'll flip half of the neutral building tiles over, and they'll have a different action and effect. Plus, there's a new Pathfinder track you can work your way up to unlock beneficial bonus abilities. For example, you can increase your movement 1 step, which is helpful because you'll only be able to unlock 1 additional step of movement on your player board in this version. Also, if you hit a certain level on the Pathfinder track, you ignore paying black-green hand fees on hazard tiles and your opponent's private buildings. These are just some of the exciting new changes you can expect in Great Western Trail New Zealand, in addition to the adorable sheep cards and the lush green game board. At Spiel 22, back in October, Ravensburger debuted Puerto Rico 1897, its new version of Andreas Seyfarth's game Puerto Rico, which debuted back in 2002. While the new setting has been welcomed by players, the production of the game has been marred with problems. When the game debuted in Essen at Spiel 22, people discovered that their copies included 16 fruit tiles instead of 12, and only 4 coffee tiles instead of 8. Copies that arrived in retail stores in Europe in late 2022 had the same errors, and copies released in the US in February 2023 also had this problem, which is not surprising given that Ravensburger released a dual language English and French edition, so the copies in the US were the same as those released in France. What is surprising is that Ravensburger still released those copies in the US despite the production error. Aside from the tile misprint for Puerto Rico 1897, Ravensburger had mirrored the graphic design of its 2020 version of Puerto Rico, which had removed all the text from building tiles other than the building's name. As a result, to know what a building does, you need to look at the overview on the back of the rulebook, and this overview contains errors. For example, the school providing an extra worker during the planting phase when it should be the building phase, and vague wording, e.g. the harbour gives bonus VP at the time of shipping, and the assembly hall similarly gives bonus VP for shipping. That forces you to dig into the rulebook for further details. And sometimes those details do seem a bit off. The US branch of Ravensburger provided an update on the availability of Puerto Rico 1897 and how it plans to address some of these issues. With Puerto Rico 1897, Ravensburger took a best-selling classic Euro game and reimagined it to a more welcoming and inclusive gaming experience for today's player. When the game hit store shelves in February, it came to our attention there were missing tiles and rulebook errors. We sincerely apologise and have taken steps to ensure these issues are corrected as quickly as possible. We have stopped production of the game to guarantee that all copies of Puerto Rico 1897 moving forward will have the correct number of tiles and an updated rulebook to support an ideal gaming experience. Those who have already purchased Puerto Rico 1897 and have missing coffee estate tiles can request the correct pieces to be shipped out to them at no additional cost through our website. Once the rulebook has been updated, it will be available for replacement or to download digitally. At Ravensburger, it is our mission to create quality games with the highest craftsmanship that deliver timeless entertainment and shared moments of fun. It is our exception that, with the corrections made, Puerto Rico 1897 will meet our players' high standards of excellence. We're Sinking is the debut title from designer Joseph Frederick of Ludimus Games, and it features a situation with which we are undoubtedly all familiar: scooping up treasure while trying to defeat a threat that will kill us. So here's an overview of the 3 to 6 player game. Players take on the role of pirates on a ship under siege. As the ship takes damage, the crew must work together to repair the ship and defeat one of the threats, be it a kraken, skeleton pirates, a megalodon, or indeed the sirens, while keeping the ship from sinking. Each turn, players choose one of 4 actions. Bucket decreases the current water level. Patch fixes breaches and the busted cannon. Fire allows you to fire cannons at the enemy, and Plunder allows you to steal revealed loot cards. Players discuss and possibly bluff about which actions they should take, then they secretly choose their actions on hidden compass dials, place them face down, then reveal them simultaneously. Will you, or your fellow crew instead, choose to selfishly pocket treasure as precious time runs out? If you can manage to take out the threat, the game ends, and you win if you have the largest treasure score. If the ship sinks before taking out the threat, you win by having the fewest cards in your hand. Jean-Louis Ribéry's party game Dixit has been hugely successful since its debut in 2008, winning the As d'Or in 2009 and Spiel des Jahres in 2010, among many other awards. 9 expansions have been released, along with several spin-off games and a line of puzzles. Along with a slew of Disney licensed games we mentioned last week, publisher Lellybelund has announced the first Disney licensed version of the game, with Dixit Disney Edition due for release in the second half of 2023. Like all Dixit titles and expansions, Dixit Disney Edition contains 84 cards, and in its release each card represents one of 84 films in the Disney or Pixar catalogue, from Steamboat Willie to Turning Red. Lellybelund noted that the artwork took 2 years from conception to completion, although this isn't surprising, given how meticulous Disney is when it comes to licensing. The creator of Root, Cole Whirl, has announced an update on its follow-up Kickstarter campaign, Arcs. Arcs was a space-themed board game that has players scoring points by fulfilling various public and secret objectives. Primarily aimed at 3 to 4 players, he's now told us that it will now feature a 2-player mode. Despite having focused on the core 3 to 4 player game mode up to this point, Whirl started devising a 2-player game mode that turned out, well, very well. In the update, Whirl explains that the 2-player mode will not require an automated player, wherein a non-existent player's moves are decided by an automated series of actions and reactions, but will see players making a few adjustments to the game. Firstly, the 2-player mode, Arcs has players restricting the map's size, then altering how cards are drawn, and finally changing how players acquire resources and score points. Rather than shuffling the game's deck every round, the players will need to exhaust the deck before being able to shuffle, which will allow players to move through the deck in a pace that better suits only having 2 players interacting with it. The merchant gameplay mechanic added to the game through the 2-player mode will see players attempting to influence a fictional figure in order to change the thresholds for scoring objectives, which will make obtaining points a little more difficult but less complicated than an automated player. Whirl also confirmed that the 2-player mode would work alongside Arc's campaign, enabling players to experience a consecutive number of games whose elements will be influenced by the previous ones. Players begin the game as space explorers in a universe populated by various strange species, technology, and worlds. Throughout the game, players will be able to construct buildings, upgrade their respective spaceships, gather resources, and wage war on their opponents. Many of Arc's actions require players to obtain resources that can be found on various planets on the game's match. Besides designing Arcs and Root, Whirl is also responsible for creating Oath, a board game about vying for political power in a fantasy kingdom. Magic the Gathering players now have a new way to shuffle up and play that isn't exactly Commander. Oathbreaker maintains the multiplayer aspect of the trading card game's most popular format, among a few others, but shifts the deck's focus towards its Planeswalkers cards. Magic the Gathering publisher Wizards of the Coast unexpectedly dropped an official page for the Oathbreaker format last week, laying out all the ground rules for this Commander sibling. Players will bring a 60-card singleton, only one of each card allowed, deck to the table, where anyone can target anyone else with attacks, spells, and abilities. Instead of legendary creatures, Oathbreaker decks are championed by a Planeswalker card, the ones with loyalty counters, and the small suite of plus and minus abilities, and a signature spell. Like Commander, the signature spell and the other 58 cards must follow the Oathbreaker's mana colour identity, meaning the contents of a deck helmed by Nahiri, the Unforgiving, can only be red, white, or a combination of the two. And yes, this new format trades the Commander title for Oathbreaker, a nod to the in-universe Oath Pact, forged by a coalition of well-known Planeswalkers. Presumably the events at players' tables are the results of a violent dissolution of that bond. Players must have their Oathbreaker on the battlefield before being able to cast their signature spell, and the format has adopted Commander's taxation rule on successive castings. 2 colourless mana is added to the cost each time they return from the command zone. If anything would remove a player's Oathbreaker from the battlefield, or their signature spell resolves or fizzles, both will return to the command zone and be ready for another, if more expensive, casting. Savvy players will already know that Oathbreaker has been kicking around since 2017. The creation of Minnesota-based non-profit Weird Cards Charitable Club, the faster-paced Big Table experience immediately gelled with a portion of MTG's players, and they've maintained an active rules committee, ban list, and other resources. The story sounds extremely similar to Commander's beginnings before Wizards of the Coast similarly adopted it into the official fold, and then pivoted a growing amount of design and packaged goods to that hungry audience. And that's where the similarities end between Oathbreaker and Commander. Wizards of the Coast did not announce any boxed products, pre-constructed decks, Jumpstart-esque boosters or starter kits alongside the official adoption. For the moment, Commander remains the favoured child of publisher and player alike. It's still a welcome addition, as fast to play and only needing to accumulate 60 cards instead of a Commander's 100 is an easier ask for new or interested players. Planeswalkers have taken a recent backseat since their use in Commander remains limited. Magic the Gathering's head designers have hinted that the trading card game is on the cusp of a monumental shift in design and storytelling that will be fully revealed in the upcoming March of the Machines set. Regardless, now's a great time to brush up on who those powerful world-hopping Planeswalkers are and what we think are the best picks out there. Disney Lorcana plans to release a second core set for its upcoming trading card game in November 2023. That's just 3 months after the official release. The first chapter lands everywhere on September 1st or August 18th for hobby shops, and positions the newest major TCG contender to make good on its previous promise of 4 core sets each year. News from Ravensburger representatives said that the unnamed second set will be available within local game shops and other specialty stores on November 17th, with a wider retail release slated for December 1st, just 3 months after the initial release. As well as informing us on the release windows of the first 2 sets of the new TCGs, a pricing structure was also included, so peeps can start saving up. The first chapter booster packs will cost $5.99 or £4.99 each, and contain 12 cards, 9 mixed commons and uncommons, 2 cards that can be either rare, super rare or legendary, and 1 foil card of a random rarity. It's a slight cheaper than some of the promotional cards that are fetching online auctions at the moment, but it also puts it slap bang in the middle of all the other price points of other TCGs like Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh and Digimon. Those wanting to hit the table with a pre-constructed deck as fast as possible will be able to choose amongst 3 previously revealed starter decks: Amber and Amethyst, Sapphire and Steel, and Emerald and Ruby. These 60-card decks will run at $16.99 or £17.99 each, and also contain a booster pack and 2 foil face cards. The Illumineer's Trove for the first chapter, which contains 8 booster packs, 2 deck boxes, no cards, just boxes, featuring Mickey and Aurora inside a storage box, along with an art-filled player's guide containing beginner's advice, deck building strategies, and a checklist for Lorcana's inaugural set. This set will come in running at £49.99. That's roughly putting it at £40 for the boosters and £10 for the deck boxes and the player's guide. All of these prices are reportedly manufacturer's suggested retail price, which tends to lock in what third-party sellers such as Amazon and big box retailers can reasonably charge for the goods. This is interesting, seeing how the venerable TCG champ, Magic the Gathering, abandoned the MSRP years ago and allowed the price of booster boxes and other products to be subject to a limited price speculation. A Ravensburger representative declined to mention if Lorcana would stick to this more controlled model beyond the first chapter. One of Lorcana's other big promises when it was first announced last year was support for an organised play program. That is apparently still in the works, but Ravensburger said it won't be slipping any details until later this year. Whether players can expect play sometime between the first chapter and the following release remains to be seen. So we're heading on over to the BGG Top 5 Hotness, and remember these games on the list may already be out, due to come out, or crowdfunding at the moment, and it tends to be a list based on what people are searching for over on Board Game Geek right now, and obviously as of recording. In 5. Struggling to maintain the force hold on the top spot, Star Wars, the deck building game, drops in the running but maintains its grip on the top 5. From designer Caleb Grace and Fantasy Flight Games, this two-player deck builder pits the Rebels versus the Galactic Empire in its inevitable showdown. In 4. Who doesn't love a drink? Well, a few of us, but that doesn't stop us looking on in wonder at how these magical spirits are produced. That's exactly what you'll be doing in Distilled, a highly thematic strategy card game about crafting spirits in a distillery, designed by Dave Beck and published by Paverson Games. In 3. When some of us enjoy going on holiday and winging it, then there are others that meticulously plan out every detail. And if that's you, Let's Go to Japan is the game for you, which sees you do just that. Over 13 rounds, draw activity cards and place them into your itinerary, optimizing your time and travel and therefore making the best of your holiday. Designed by Josh Wood and published by AEG. In 2. The sun only sets for a short time as Earth makes a re-emergence in the top 5 yet again. The 1 to 5 player open world builder from Inside Up Games and designer Maxime Tardif sees you growing and developing amazing life forms, creating symbiotic ecosystem and habitats to produce a sustainable future for the planet. In 1. Jumping straight into the top spot from designers Stefan Luis, Tom Mayer and Rachel Rusk is Townsfolk Tussle, a co-op boss battler set in a vintage cartoon world. So take on 4 ruffians, each one tougher than its predecessor, to save Eureka Springs. Tussle Townsfolk is being published by Panic Roll. And we're over to crowdfunding. Think yourself man or woman enough to follow in the footsteps of the greatest explorers of antiquities like Indiana Jones? I'll just go with it. The Department of Antiquities has uncovered evidence of a series of lost tombs. They have invited you, one of the world's 6 leading archaeologists, to help find the lost tombs and recover their treasures. Each day, the Minister of Antiquities will announce one new dig permit, and the first expedition to find a viable route is allowed to travel and dig there. So you'll race against competing archaeological expeditions across desert sands, through jungle oases, and across rivers to find the tombs. But beware of scorpions, raiders, and sandstorms along the way. When a player wins a round, they can travel the winning route and deploy a new dig camp. With each new dig camp comes the ability to dig who knows what you will find. The game ends when all tombs are discovered or an expedition runs out of dig camps, whichever occurs first. Either way, the player with the most points wins the game. Secrets in the Sand is an adventure of speed and strategy, played across a desert terrain with a superimposed grid system. The game has 3 pledge levels. One gives you access to the pledge manager once the project has ended for just £1. The next is the main one for backers, gaining you a copy of the game and all unlocked stretch goals for £42. Lastly, for retailers or group pledgers is £120, and that gets you 3 copies of the game, all with unlocked stretch goals. Secrets in the Sand has already reached its funding goal and runs up until Saturday, 1st of April. I'm sure they didn't get all the info from that tidbit. I mean, who plays a game with dice and doesn't actually roll them? Oops, too much info. Okay, you say goodbye then. And it's a goodbye from me. Keep safe, Meeples, keep those dice rolling, the cards shuffling, and we'll be right here for you next week.